The next thing we're going to look at is the permutation formula. And it's a formula that we don't use often because we have our fundamental counting principle, which is the spaces and putting the numbers into the spaces that we've used so far. But we're going to see how that could be put into a formula. So if you wanted to use a formula, you could. So here we have Chico. He has 7 songs on his iPod. I don't think iPods even exist anymore. It's like his iPhone. And he hasn't realized he can download more music yet, or maybe he just got it. 7 songs isn't very much. But on his way to school, he can walk and listen to 3 songs, and so he decides he's going to make all the different playlists possible of 3 songs from the 7 songs that he has. How many different playlists are possible? Well, using our fundamental counting principle, he has 3 decisions to make. What song's going to be first? What song's going to be second? What song's going to be third? And how many choices does he have for his first song? 7. And then if he always chooses a different song, 6, and then 5. 7 times 6 times 5, 210 different possibilities. Now, if we took that answer of 7 times 6 times 5 and we rewrote it like this, can you see that those are identical? That the 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 and the 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 would all cancel out, and they're the same. Why would you want to do that then, to write extra numbers? Well, then you could say this is the same as 7 factorial over 4 factorial. And the 4 factorial is the same as 7 minus 3. Now, the reason we want to use 7 minus 3 is because this 3 was how many spaces we had. And it ends up being the same thing. And this we write as a permutation. The formula for a permutation, which is in the box, is NPR is n factorial over n minus r factorial. So for Chico's playlists, it would be, oh, that's not a C. That's a C, not a P. 7p3, which is just the same as 7 factorial over 7 minus 3 factorial, which you might realize that's the same as 7 times 6 times 5. So the 3 here, if we think about our fundamental counting principle, that number represents how many spaces you have, and the 7 is always the number that you start with and go down by 1 each time. So where might this permutation formula come in handy? Well, maybe after a month of having his iPhone, Chico downloads a bunch more music and now has 300 songs on his phone. He also moves 7 miles further away from school, but his parents still make him walk. So he can now listen to 22 songs on the way to school instead of 3. How many playlists could you make now? Well, you could do 22 spaces showing your work, right? And you could start with 300 and then 299 and then write in all those numbers. But this might be a place where you go, oh, using the formula 300p22 is a shorter way of writing it. And I could figure this out by doing 300 factorial over 300 minus 22 factorial. This number might be so big, it might not even work on your calculator, but I want you to see if you can figure out how to type this into your calculator. And tell me if it's too big of a number for your calculator to figure out or not. So let's go to our first example. 8 students are competing in a race. How many ways can they finish first, second, and third? And the reason we don't use the permutation formula very often is because it's so much easier just to say I have 3 decisions to make. Who's going to come first? Who's going to come second? Who's going to come third? Maybe I even describe them underneath here. And there are 8 choices for first place, 7 choices for second, 6 choices for third, 336 possible choices in total. That's easy to think of. But you could also do this by saying there are 8 objects. I need to have permutations of 3 of those objects, which according to the formula would be 8 factorial over 8 minus 3 factorial, which is 8 factorial over 5 factorial. And if I wanted to figure this out, when simplifying factorials, expand the bigger one until you get to the smaller one. You don't have to expand the smaller one because you can cancel things out, and you get 8 times 7 times 6. And you say to yourself, all that work, why didn't I just use the spaces to begin with? Which we'll do most often. Questions for practice 4, 6, 7, and 8. So try some stuff is going to get you to use the formula, and some you can just do with spaces.